Alright, before we talk about symbols, I'm going to jump ahead and talk about these guys right here, and we'll start with forwards and backwards. Forward and backward is basically just moving your layers up and down within the stack. If you remember from the last video, items at the top of the stack are more visible, while items at the bottom of the stack are less visible depending on their size. As an example, this login button background, that's this orange shape right here. If I click the backward button, that'll move the layer downwards, and then now it's beneath the blur layer that I have here, so it's being affected by the blur layer. If I move it backwards one more time, now it's beneath the campfire background image. That's this whole image here, so now you can't see it at all. If I move it back up using the forward button, back to where it was, right about there, now it's back in place. The text is sitting right on top of it. The shape layer is right beneath it. I don't really use the forward and backwards buttons that much, if at all. If I want to move a layer, I'll generally just click and drag it up and down the stack. Much easier for me. Alright, group and ungroup. Generally I'll use grouping just to kind of organize things. So take for instance the login button again. I've got the shape layer selected, and I'm going to hold down Shift, choose the login text. I'm going to hit the group button. You can also hit Command G on your keyboard, and that'll group it as well. Now you can just click on this and rename it. Always good once you group things to name them, just to kind of keep them organized. And now you'll see that, just like we talked about before, you've got this folder icon to show that it's grouped. If you want to ungroup, you can use the ungroup button, and then that'll separate those two guys again. Alright, next up we have edit and rotate. With my shape selected here, you'll notice that if I click rotate, my cursor turns into this curved arrow. I can click and drag that and rotate my shape around. You also notice that as I rotate in the upper right, the number of degrees will change. So if you have a specific number of degrees that you want to set it to, let's say 90 degrees, 180 degrees, you can do that there as well. Alright, so jumping up here again, if I click edit, now I've got all these handy dandy little points. I can click and drag these and then make a custom shape, whatever you need, at your fingertips. And then once you're done, click finish editing, and now you've got a new shape. Alright, next up we're talking about masking, scaling, and flattening. For masking, I'm going to use these two images here, and I'm going to add those to my design over here. It's kind of like a profile screen. So for this rectangle here, you notice that in the layers panel, and I've also got my oval here. Alright, so for this rectangle, let's go ahead and drag this guy right over the top. And it's really subjective on where you want to resize it for, or what you actually want to display. So for mine, I have my image selected. That's the bitmap here. I'm going to hold down Command and choose my rectangle. I'll come up here and hit mask, and now it's masked to that shape, so it's basically cropped to fit only that shape. You can also come in here and customize a little bit further. You can either click and drag and move that around, but let's say you clicked off and now you don't have that anymore. You can click back here. Let's open up the grouping, go to your bitmap image. You can click and drag that around. You can also hold down the Shift button, drag it in until you get it to where you want it. I'm going to do it about right there. Now we're going to do the same thing for this image right here with the oval. So I'll take this, drop it right over the top where I kind of think I want it. I'll hold down the Command button and choose both of these. I'll go back up to mask again, and now I've got it positioned roughly where I want it. If I want to kind of fine tune it, let's go ahead and click it, open up this grouping. I'm going to go to the bitmap, and then I'll just use the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of position it where I want it, and I think right about there. Alright, next up let's talk about Boolean operations. I know it sounds a little scary, but you will use these pretty frequently. I know I do. So we've got union, subtract, intersect, and difference. I've got two shapes selected right now. These are two ovals. I've got a light colored oval on top of this dark colored oval. And we'll start with subtract. Now what subtract is going to do is it's going to take the topmost layer and subtract that area from the bottom layer. So if I click this, now I'm left with a donut shape, and that middle layer basically subtracted and I can see through it now. You'll also notice that in the layers panel I've got what's called a combined shape. It's kind of like a grouping but a little different. If I click the down arrow, I still have access to my original layers. I can come in here and I can manipulate these. I'm going to hold down Alt Shift. I can change it to make it a thinner donut. I can drag it inwards, make it a thicker donut. I can also move this oval totally where it was and create kind of a marble or some type of glare effect, what have you. I'll hit Command Z to undo that. Let's get back to where we were. Alright, now let's move on to union. If I take this topmost layer, let's drag it out to about here. I'll hold down Shift and select both of those guys. We'll click union. Now I have one shape. It's kind of like a snowman kind of thing. Same deal, I've got a combined shape over here. If I click the down arrow, I still have access to move this around, and I can change it just a little bit further. So I can still manipulate my shapes even though this operation has been applied. Alright, so now let's talk about intersect. And I'm going to separate these a little bit. Let's drag this guy over here. Let's put this one right here and resize it. And I'm going to slightly overlap those guys. Now with intersect, and let's select both of these. With intersect, it's only going to keep the areas that are touching. So if I click that, now I've got this little slice where both of these guys were touching. Same as before, I've got a combined shape. If I come in here and make changes to my original shape, it's a little touchy. I use the arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of move that around. I can make the shape a little bit bigger, but you get the idea. I still have the ability to customize it further. Now with difference, I'm going to get the exact opposite of intersect. So the areas that are touching is what's going to be subtracted, and then everything else is going to be what's left. Same deal on the layers panel. I've got a combined shape, and I can manipulate these guys further. Alright, now we've also got the zoom feature. It's exactly what you think it would be. If you click the plus, you'll zoom in. Click the minus, you're going to zoom out. Quick little tip, if you hit Command 2 on your keyboard, that's going to automatically zoom you in to what you're currently looking at. So it'll do the size of your canvas. For view, you have the ability to turn on or turn off rulers. You can show the curvature of pixels, showing slices, showing grid. So you can toggle these off and on. The show grid and show layout we'll talk about later on, but these are mainly for when you're designing. The show layout can be for designing web pages. Show grid can just be something to help out. I don't normally use that, but there are applications where it might help you kind of get consistent designs. Alright, we've got our design from earlier. I want to show you preview really quick, even though it's not going to really do much. This will let you preview your designs, and if you've linked things up like the login button and you've applied actions and tied them to maybe a landing screen or other subsequent screens, you can click through your designs and see how it functions and kind of show a working prototype, which is really, really cool.